Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Ogunshaki. Here on Today in the News, we read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories making waves across Nigeria. And I'm starting with Vanguard on the paper review. Vanguard is leading with DSS bust new naira note gang, fingers back officials, POS operators charge 10%, money outside banks declines, banks reduce old note OTC withdrawal to 10,000 naira. Customers' frustration over new Naira notes continues. You can see that story on page 5. We also have three photo stories here showing Yeye Ojua Erelu Abiola Dosumu presenting Vanguard's Regulator of the Year award to Professor Umar Garba, Executive Vice Chairman, Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, as others look on at the Vanguard Personality of the Year Award 2022 held at a hotel Lagos. The other one is also showing Chief Mrs. Nike Akonde, former Minister of Industry, presenting the Vanguard Lifetime Achievement Award 2022 to Mr. Audu Ogbe, former Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, last Friday. The child is showing Senator Bodio Lajumoke, presenting Vanguard's Lifetime Achievement Award 2022 to Mr. Ray Ekpo, veteran journalist. Now on page 31, sports, Mourinho, Osimhen's like Drogba. Energy exploration, Nigeria's rig count rises 15.2% to 114. Stories above, for scarcity, schools closed in Benin City as civil society groups protest. Appeal court judgment, as President Atiku will release Nnamdi Kano, says Obiora Okonkwo. You can see that on page 27. On page 6, Buhari commissioned NSIA's 10 megawatt Kano solar power projects. Lastly, on Vanguard on page 21, Obasanjo wanted to roast Atiku. I rescued him. That's coming from Tinubu. Tinubu's unending graft no longer a laughing matter. That's coming from PDP campaign spokesperson. Now, away from that, let's move to the Nation newspaper. The Nation this morning is leading with bank failed to dispense cash in halls and ATM terminals. POS operators hawkers sell Naira notes in cities. Emefiele's action political, says Reps leader. Inside the story, you see banks branches load 1 million Naira new notes daily in ATM machines. DSS links bank officials arrest many. 1,000 Naira charged on every 10,000 Naira. You can see that story on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. On page 28, Tinubu will use oil to develop Akwa Ibom. Our protesters raid APC office, Tinubu Shetima Oshun Center. You can see that on page 6. Abuja Kaduna train services resume. Stories above, why Ekiti Cargo Airport is not functional yet by government. Lastly, on the Nation newspaper, how overvoting voided Ademola Adeleke's victory. Full judgment. You can see these stories on pages 19 and 20 of the Nation newspaper. Now let's move to the Guardian. Guardian is leading with Nigeria must not fail with 2023 polls. UN scribe warns. Charges NBA to ensure success of general elections. NBA apologizes to Nigerians for neglecting role. Polls must hold as scheduled, Afenifere insists. Once against use of court to abort exercise. European Union deploys 100 observers to monitor elections. The Sharia Council fears target poll may instigate violence. Utomi, INEC must pass confidence test, tackle underage voting and vote buy. You can see that story on page 6. Despite extension, Nigerians can't withdraw old and new notes. Our agitation is for a restructured Nigeria, not Yoruba president, says Bola Wole. You can see the stories on pages 6 and 14. Stories above, Atiku will heed appeal court judgment on Kano if elected president, says Okonkwo. Lastly, on the Guardian newspaper, Nigeria risks losing foreign assets to reckless borrowing, CSO1s. You can see that story on page 3. Now let's quickly go over to the Punch newspaper. Punch is leading with Buhari's Kano visits. Protesting youth barricade roads, stone helicopter. Nigerians don't appreciate what they have, says Buhari as protesters rampage. Foreign elements using Boko Haram to destabilize Nigeria, President insists. APC campaign council kicks as PDP blames Tinubu Ganduje for attacks. You can see that story on page 2. Now, on pages 4 and 5, panic as Lagos hoodlums invade school, chase pupils. Federal government backs United States visa ban on election riggers. You can see the stories on pages 4 and 5 and 27. Still on 27, 7 directors jostle for accountant general's job. Stories above, return seized assets to me. Desiani tells federal government. Lastly, on the Punch newspaper, 650 naira petrol. Pengasan plans a clampdown on marketers. You can see that on page 20 of the Punch newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join us after the break for the analysis. Welcome back if you're just joining me. This is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I'm Damlola Okunshakin. Joining me this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. He's the publisher of the Page Today, Lucky Today, and Ikeja Cherry Today. Good morning, Mr. Dayo.
Good morning, Damlola. Good morning to all our viewers.
Yes, and before we actually move straight to what Vanguard is leading, let's talk about the fact that new Naira note is not available at the ATMs. What do you think about this?
This is a big problem. I mean, there's so much cash dependency in our society. I mean, transports, just getting to work and back. The transporters are not going to take transfers. They don't have POS in the downfalls or whatever. So we're still so largely dependent on cash that this scarcity is a big problem. And you can see the queues in all the ATMs. Many ATMs don't even have cash, because there's no more disbursement of the old notes anymore. You can only pay the old notes in. The banks won't give you any old notes. So we're totally dependent on the new notes, and they're not readily available. So there's queues at the ATM. Many ATMs don't have cash. The few that do, there's queues. Then they even restrict the amount you can collect. I think if it's your bank ATM, you can get up to 20,000. If it's not your bank ATM, 10,000, or in some cases 5,000. So it's a big problem, but well, as with all things in Nigeria, we are adjusting slowly.
All right, DSS has arrested some members of an organized syndicate selling the new Naira notes in part of the country. I mean, it's funny that we can't withdraw it at the ATM centers, but the POS operators can actually sell this. What do you think about it?
Well, it's really sad. It speaks to corruption at all levels in Nigeria, because the fact that we can't get them at all. Where are these hawkers or traders? I saw a video of a social event over the weekend, and they were selling the Naira freely, but we can't get them through the bank. So how are these people able to get them? It speaks to collusion within the banking system, which is all about corruption. So CBN is actually supplying the banks. Then some people inside the banks are making private arrangements with these hawkers so that they can make money, which is unconscionable. So you look at it, and CBN long ago has prohibited this selling of Naira. They prohibited spraying at parties. They prohibited all kinds of things, but they've never enforced it. So even before this new change of the Naira, the redesign of the Naira, we already saw this situation where at parties, hawkers were selling new notes, because when you spray, you generally want to spray with new notes. So it's been an industry in Nigeria for a long time, and the government has looked the other way and never tried to enforce it. So now at a time like this that is critical to now say, oh, DSS is going to go after them and this and that, I think really that at the end of the day it's a superficial effort, because they've allowed it like a cancer to fester for so long. There is now a solid industry. There's actually people who make their daily bread, their living, from hawking or from transacting in new Naira notes. And this is their time. This is the time because there's a scarcity. This is the time when they stand to make so much money. So they're not just going to idly look away and say, oh, because CBN says. CBN has always said you can't do this. And they've continued to do it, but there's been no enforcement. So I wish the DSS locked, but I don't think it's a problem that the DSS can overcome in such a short period of time, because this is a crisis situation. The industry is entrenched across all the states, across all the cities, across all the social events. It's an industry that's flourishing, that several thousands of people are making their daily living off of. And then there are people in the banks who are collaborating. And it won't surprise me if the collaboration reaches all the way to the CBN. It won't surprise me at all, because for us not to be able to get the Naira notes and for this thing to be in plentiful supply, there was a social event this last weekend. The hawker opened her bag, brought out the thing, and there were 10 stacks of 500 and 10 stacks of 200. When I say stacks, I mean each one is a pack. So the 500, each one is 50,000. She had about 10 packs. Same with the 200, she had about 10 packs. So if you aggregate all that and see how much it is, then look at, she's just one person. There's hundreds of them all over the place. So it's a systemic issue to where CBN is giving the banks are not putting them in their ATM machine. They are taking them out, replacing them either with old notes or with transfer. They're not stealing the money. They're making sure they cover, because that's the quickest way to get exposed is take the new notes, give them to somebody to go and sell, then you don't replace it. So they're taking the new notes, replacing them with old notes, so the value is still there. On the bank's books, the money is complete. But they have taken this and they're now going to go and do what they call arbitrage, which is profit over the gap. And you won't believe, the 500 naira this weekend was being sold at a 20% markup. So a pack of 50,000 was being sold for 60,000. The 200 is even worse. That was being sold at a 50% markup. So you buy 200 naira note, you pay 30,000 for 20,000 value. Why is it like that? Because 200 naira, people need change. People need to get change. People need to buy smaller things. When you want to give money away, you want to give smaller. So the 200 is in higher demand than the 500 or the 1,000. So 50% markup, something that we should just be able to draw from the ATM. So I'm not sure the implementation of this policy. The policy is good. It's admirable. The objective is good. They want to clear all the money that's hoarded in homes, in soak-away pits, in cupboards. They want to clear it all out, sanitize the system, prevent vote buying. There are so many benefits. Enhance a cashless society. There's so many benefits. But I think it wasn't well thought through. I think the implementation is having hiccups. I think the fact that the everyday Nigerian is having to spend so many hours in the queue to get 5,000 or get 10,000 naira, many times they still walk away empty-handed because either the money has finished in the machine or because all of a sudden the machine stops working and, all kinds of things. So it's really bringing a lot of hardship when you consider that we're also queuing for fuel right now, we're queuing for PVCs right now, we're also queuing in traffic just to get to where we want to go. So Nigeria is currently a current country of queues. So,
but do you think it's working? Because they said, what we heard was that if this money comes out, the 1,000 naira will actually be very scarce. I mean, if you go to the ATMs now, the ATMs dispensing new naira notes are dispensing 1,000 naira note. I've not seen the 200 naira notes, even the 500 naira notes. I've not seen it, but I've seen the 1,000 naira notes everywhere. But the 200 naira note is scarce.
Yes, I think what happens is that to be able to get enough money in the hands of enough people quickly. Because if you only put 200 for now, yes, the policy is that the machines will only dispense 200. That's where we are going to. But if you start it now with 200 and people can only collect maybe 5,000 or 6,000, that's not enough money in the hands of. So the queues will be longer. The queues will stretch for many, many more days. So it's easier to give 1,000 to start because then each person can collect 20,000. That'll hold you for 2 or 3 days or 4 days. But if you're only able to collect 6,000 or 5,000 because 200s, by tomorrow you'll be back in the queue again. So the queues will last interminably. So I think the 1,000 now is just to get enough cash in the hands of as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. Then when things stabilize, you'll now see that they withdraw the 1,000 and they start putting the lower denominations. I think that's what's happening.
Some people are of the opinion that the extension is actually too short. Like the reps are requesting for 6-month extension, that the Nigerians should actually be eased into this process. But of course, with what CBN is achieved, do you think CBN is trying to achieve, do you think this is possible?
Look at the other side of the coin. When February 10 comes, on February 9, enough people will still stand up and complain that they haven't had enough time. What I'm saying is there's never enough time. If you give 10 years, there will still be some people who on the last day will say they didn't have a chance to go. So I think the correct thing is to set a deadline and stick to it, but let the deadline be realistic. Don't make it too short. So the 3 months may have been too short, but if you think about it, they told us this thing since October. And since October, November, December, January, most of us should have had enough time to get rid of our old naira notes. The problem that I foresee is not the deadline of making the old notes obsolete. That's not the problem. Enough people have gotten rid of their old notes. The problem is coming from the fact that the new notes are not being injected into the system quickly enough. So the deadline is not the problem. Look at it now. All these 10 days they've given us till February 10. I'm not sure you will see that many. If you look at the CBN numbers, they said 2.7 trillion was outside the banking system in terms of cash before they started this exercise. Now there's only 900 billion out there. So about 1.5, 1.6 trillion has been paid back in old notes put into the system. So that 900 billion are still out there. I'm not sure too much of it will come in the next 10 days. What needs to happen, which you didn't need to extend the deadline for, is to inject the new notes into the system. And you don't need to extend any deadline for that. So I think that deadline should still have stayed for today in terms of getting rid of the old notes. Because anybody who's still holding the old notes is probably because the money is illicit and they can't declare it, they can't take it to the bank. So that extension is not going to help. You, me, and every other common Nigerian who has the naira notes have found a way to spend it or put it in the last 3 months. We don't have it anymore. So the extension is useless because the extension does not solve our critical problem today, which is getting the new notes. Inject new notes into the system. You don't need to extend the deadline for that. So the CBN is taking 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. That's the truth, because yes, they've set a deadline. They've said we are not using this old money anymore. We've adjusted. We've gotten rid of all the old money, but where is the new one? That's what we want to know. Give us the new.
All right, putting a DSS and ICPC in banks, do you think it's actually a nice idea?
Well, I said just now that most of the money that's still out there is illicit money. So ICPC and DSS are there to catch those who are coming in to pay. But that's our way in Nigeria, all huff and puff. And because if at the end of the day, we do a lot of show that's meaningless. Because at the end of the day, if somebody comes to pay in big money in the bank, it's in the record. You can see it. It's in the record. Why do you have to station people physically in the bank when they've come and they've deposited the money? The record is there because it's electronic. They've recorded it. They've counted the money. They've collected it. And CBN has a regulation. If you as an individual go into a bank and you pay more than 1 million, you have to fill a specific 1 million in cash. You have to fill a specific form. They have to inform CBN about it. And CBN will come after you because they will ask you, where did you get the money from? So this is just posturing. It's just to put fear in people. ICPC, DSS, EFCC, they're all standing at the bank waiting for you. And you too, like a mugu, will go inside the bank with Ghana must go sacks of money to go and pay them in. It's a waste of time, really, because at the end of the day, ICPC and DSS, they know where the money is, who is with, and they know how to go about and get it. What they will do by stationing those people there is scare away legitimate people. So if I have 100,000 that I earned properly and I hear DSS is in the bank, will I go? I won't go. So at the end of the day, it's just stymieing the possibilities of legitimate money coming back into the bank. I think they shouldn't bother themselves.
All right, like you said earlier, you said that Nigeria is now full of queues.
Yes.
Let's talk about fuel scarcity. I mean, even outside in front of the office here, you see the long queues causing traffic and all that. Yes. But what do you think about it? I mean, it's been a long time now. We're still talking about fuel scarcity.
I don't think we've been told the truth about this fuel scarcity problem, because we've heard all kinds of reasons. We've heard that it's logistics. They said, that there are not enough trucks to bring the fuel in. They say the daughter ships that go out, because the oil tankers that bring oil from overseas, they're too big to come and berth at the port, so they park far out in the sea, and then they send smaller barges or things to go out and bring the oil in. So they said, those smaller ships, there's not enough of them. They're not. We've heard all kinds of excuses, but in doing some analysis and some research, what is starting to come out is that in actual fact, the government is broke. They don't have enough money to buy the fuel. Because if you look at it, the Minister of Finance, Nenadi Usman, she said that government can't even afford to pay subsidy. Government can't even afford to pay for the oil, for the crude oil. You would think that, okay, we are swapping, right? Maybe we are bringing crude out of the ground. We are selling the crude, and the money we get from the crude, they should use to bring refined products back. But when they bring the refined products, because government is paying subsidy on it, and that subsidy is so massive, there's not even enough money to pay for the product itself. And remember, NNPC is the only one allowed to import now. So even private oil companies who have money or who can go to bank and borrow, they can't import. So NNPC is the only one. And where does NNPC get its money from? NNPC is government, although it's been privatized to some extent. NNPC is government. So NNPC relies on the crude oil that we send out to use it to now bring refined products back. But there's an imbalance in terms of what we're sending out, what we are bringing in, the subsidy we are paying, to where government now is short on money. to be able to pay for refined products. So it's the small money they have. They're able to import less, is what it's looking like, because we've never had it this bad for this many months. Usually, if there's petrol scarcity, it will be over in a few days. But this has been lingering since when? October of last year. So it looks like a systemic problem. And all indications simply point to the fact that government is not importing enough. NNPC is not importing enough. There's not enough supply to go around. At one point, they told us they have 1.3 billion gallons in reserve. Don't worry, there's no problem. Where are those billion gallons of reserve? Or liters of reserve? How come they have not found their way to the various fuel stations, to where today in Nigeria, only 1 out of every 5 petrol stations has fuel to sell? And out of the 1 in every 5, 50% of those 1 is selling above the official government rate. So how do you explain that? So look, I don't understand what the problem is. I've racked my brain, talked with experts, and you keep hearing different things from different people. But at the end of the day, nobody can really put a finger on what the actual cause is, because government is not being transparent. They are not telling us the truth. And it's obvious already. They are not telling us the truth. So, well, it looks like this hardship is going to continue for some time. So let us adjust ourselves to the reality of the fact that fuel scarcity is going to remain with us for some time, until there's a radical change in structure of how we are getting this fuel, whether it means refineries coming on stream, whether it means removing the subsidy, whatever the case may be. Something radical has to happen. Some radical change has to occur before we begin to see an improvement. As long as it's business as usual, this will continue.
But do you think the government, they have the right to tell marketers how the price to sell their fuel? Because in some areas now, for example, the command area, they're selling their fuel for 350 naira per liter. Ikorodu, they're selling it for almost 400 naira per liter. Some places are still selling for 185 naira per liter, but that is very few.
Yeah, see, the thing about it is that there's price control in a situation where oil or fuel is our national resource and we're all supposed to enjoy it. So some brainiac people years ago came up with this idea that let us keep the people docile and satisfied by giving them cheap fuel. So that has become unsustainable, and government has been talking about deregulating the industry. What does deregulation mean? It means let market forces determine. For example, you go and you buy your gari now, or you buy your peak milk or your Indomie. What determines the price you pay for Indomie in the market? What determines? It's market forces. It's in a freewheeling capitalistic system where government is not involved. The market determines the price. Simply willing buyer, willing seller. What are you willing to pay for a pack of Indomie? The market looks at variables. Of course, they first of all look at their production cost. How much did it take for me to make this, distribute it to the market, do the advertising, all the stuff? What is my total cost? Now, how much do I mark it up? How much profit do I put on top that Damilola will be willing to still pay for it? So there's a constant tussle between the consumer and the producer to find that perfect point that works for both of them. Because the producer will not sell below his cost or below a reasonable markup so he can make some money to cover his costs. And you, the consumer, will not pay exorbitantly for it beyond the value you will get from eating it. So that is market forces at play. And that is what government has said it wants to do with fuel, so that let the marketers import, know how much it costs them to import, know how much to add on top of it that will make it profitable for them and beneficial for you to buy. So if it is completely deregulated and government hands off completely, the market will determine. Now, you will now see at that point that Ikorodu won't be selling for 400 and Ilukweju will be selling for 200, because Ilukweju people will drive to Ikorodu to go and buy it for less. So competition lets all the marketers or all the players be looking at each other. They might put a 50 kobo difference or a 1 naira difference so that they have a competitive edge over the next person. But you won't see these wide disparities like 450 in one place and 200 in another place in a pure free market situation, because competition will always prevail. So why is government still halfway hands in, halfway hands off? Well, of course, it's a subsidy issue that politically is a hot potato to say we are taking away the subsidy and let free market prevail. Because the people of Nigeria for long have been starved of the dividends of democracy. And we look at it and we say, so what is our benefit, this national cake? Apart from all the politicians are taking for themselves, what do we as a people get out of the common resources that belong to all of us? So government long time ago tweaked that we can keep these people quiet if we give them free fuel. We let them cheap fuel. We let them know that, look, oil is the major resource of Nigeria. We're all enjoying it. So you're getting free fuel. So people have kept quiet for a long time because the fuel has been very cheap. If you compare what they pay for fuel in the UK and the US compared to what we pay for it here, it's like we're getting it for free. So, but that's not sustainable anymore because government resources are lean and they need money to do so many other things and they can't continue to give us cheap fuel. So you look at it and you say, what is the way forward? How do we resolve this thing? How you look at Nigerians, individual Nigerians are suffering. We're having a difficult time. So I really don't know what the ultimate solution is, but I do think that it's got to be a political solution. I do think that government has to be more proactive. I don't know about this Petroleum Industry Act, that law, that bill that President Buhari signed that was passed into law, was supposed to remove all these bottlenecks and make life easier for us in terms of this fuel thing, but it's not happening.
In all of this, with the PVC queues, the filling stations, naira notes, scarcity, and all that, we've not heard from NLC. I mean, usually we see NLC come out to threaten strike and talk about what they are going to do, but we've not heard. They've just been talking about the varsity salaries and all that.
Well, yeah, they're probably distracted by the whole ASU matter, but I saw something in the papers yesterday where ASU is now saying, look, electricity tariff hike, you snuck it in overnight, fuel has gone up. So they're now starting to rattle their saber a little bit and say, we're going to protest, we are going to complain, we won't let. But NLC, the way NLC operates, they agitate for the welfare of Nigerian workers. And anytime anything is not going the way of the common man, the NLC steps up to the plate. So if they've been quiet up to this point, it's probably because they themselves look at the totality of the situation and realize that government is overwhelmed. So you compound an issue by protest, an issue that's already a problem. As it is, how is protest going to solve the fuel crisis? How is protest going to bring petrol into the tanks of the petrol stations? How is protest going to make more naira available in the ATMs? How is protest going to make PVC collection faster and more efficient? There's one queue you missed out. How about the queues on the expressway getting to where we are going? That's gotten worse. Yes, we're queuing to get to where we are going. We're queuing that queue too.
You queue to get fuel and you still queue
to get to where you're going, to board the bus. And then after you've boarded the bus, you're now queuing to get to where you need to go. So yes, it's a period of queues. We should just adjust to it.
All right, let's talk about this one. Some angry youths in Kano State on Monday hurled stones at the advance convoy of the president during an official visit to Kano. I mean, sometime he was warned not to come to the state, and later on he was told that he's now welcomed in the state. But it seems the youth did not agree with that statement.
The bottom line is Nigerians are angry. They are hungry. They're angry. A hungry man is an angry man. Nigerians are angry at the state of the economy, at the state of poverty, the number of out-of-school children, and now on top of all the economic issues, we're now compounding it with no fuel, no money in the machines, no PVCs, nothing. So Nigerians are angry. So when the president was scheduled to go to Kano yesterday, they scheduled it last week to go and commission some projects. Governor Ganduje told him to postpone the visit because he has felt the temperature of his people and they are angry. So he can't, for security reasons, recommend that the president should come. He said, especially because of this naira shortage, this new naira shortage, because up in Kano, most people are daily paid workers. Most people are illiterate. All the children are Amajiri kind of setup. So he said the larger percentage of his population are in the rural areas where there are no banks, there are no POS machines, there's no telephone network, nothing. So they live in a cash economy, majority of his population. And now they can't get the cash. So people who are poor are poorer, people who are hungrier. He said, so don't come, because if you come, they might vent their anger on you. So they were still watching the situation when on Sunday, some people even thought that letter from Governor Ganduje might have been what added to the pressure on the president to call the CBN and tell them to extend the deadline. Of course, there was also the Tinubu outburst in Abeokuta that some people believe also played a role in getting that 10-day extension, but we don't really know. But some people said, some analysts thought that the Ganduje letter warning Buhari that the temper of the population is not good at the moment, so don't come. That may have led the president to do some introspection and say, if people are feeling this really bad, shouldn't we do something about it? And Ganduje specifically mentioned the issue of the naira deadline. So when the extension now came, he now revised his security, not warning, but his security advisory. He now revised it and said, okay, now that you have extended this deadline, maybe it is safe for you to come. That might have been a mistake, because maybe you should have gone out again to go and check the temper of the people, the tenure of the people, because obviously they were still angry. So he told the president, okay, it's okay for you to now come. President now came, got there, did his commissioning, only to find out that angry youths were stoning his convoy. I even heard his helicopter was very narrowly missed, that they tried to bring the helicopter down. So, and what is really bothersome about this is that the president is Fulani, he's well liked in the north for use in Kano, which is more or less his constituency, although that's not his home state. His home state is Katsina, but Kano is very near his home state, and this is where his core support emanates from. For them to have been that angry to begin to stone his convoy, stone. By the time you are stoning your leaders, by the time you are stoning your president's convoy, that is the height of disgruntlement. There's no greater disrespect for any leader than to be stoned by his own people. So it means that the people of Kano are totally disaffected with this administration and its policies. Complete disaffection.
According to information, 24 local governments in Kano State have no banks.
Absolutely. And that was part of what the governor tried to tell the president, that we are dependent on cash. So if 24 local governments don't have any bank at all, imagine the population of those local governments and how many people are now unable to operate because there's no cash in the system. There's no way to get cash to them. So that was why he said, don't come. So I think maybe his advisory may have been too hasty. Then again, we don't know for sure that he cancelled it and said, come now. We're just hearing that. We don't know. We didn't see any official proclamation to the effect that he rescinded his earlier statement and now said it's okay for you to come. But one way or the other, the president still went. And when he got there, he got the shocker of his life. But I'm glad he's safe, and I'm glad that there was no incident, no injury reported. I also commend the security forces because they showed marvelous restraint. Because when the president is under attack or under threat, the first thing the security forces know how to do is what? Spray everywhere. You know, just start shooting. Although I think some tear gas was released when things started to get out of hand. But the security forces were really measured, and they really showed maturity by not just going haywire and spraying everywhere in fulfillment of their responsibility to protect the president. So no lives were lost, but it sent a very clear, loud message to the administration that, boy, the public, at least a section of the public, is not happy with some of the measures you are taking, and you need to look at things a little bit differently.
All right, let's end this on a lighter note today with Mr. and Mrs. And the first person speaking this morning is Mrs. She says, are you saving your friend? Are you saying your friend is right by cheating? Okay, are you saying your friend is right by cheating on his wife? And Mr. replied, look, she's almost 60. What else does she want? It's her husband. If her husband has a side chick, let her look for his side end.
Okay, well, yeah, equal rights. What a man can do, a woman should be able to do as well. So if Mr.'s friend wants a side chick, then Mrs. should have the right to also get a side.
But he's saying that Mrs. is almost 60, so Mr. can also get a side chick.
Well, that's all right. age is not a barrier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dyer, for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Yes, he's the publisher of Ilu Page Today, Lekki Today, and Ikeja GRA Today. He just reviewed and analyzed some of the stories on the front pages to us this morning. Now, to get more of our top stories, you can follow us on all our social media platforms, showing on your screen, including our WhatsApp number. My name is Damilola Okunshaki. Have a lovely day.